All right. All right. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We got some fun stuff planned, hopefully, and some good discussions. For those of you that don't know me or haven't seen me in a while, my name is Danish. I'm a social studies teacher at Malvern High School, along with my buddy over here.
My name is Brian China, also a social studies teacher with Mr. Nadeem. Great to see so many kids with us tonight and interested in what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, when we thought about doing something like this, Brian, I know, our main goal is education, right? And that's what we want to do tonight. We want to kind of give a recap of what happened last week, what's continuing to happen in our country. I mean, no doubt a historic election. Would you agree with that? Is this I mean, you're the AP US history guy. Is this something that 50 years from now AP US history teachers are going to be talking about?
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because in my AP US history class, we're talking about that period of Jacksonian democracy, which, as you know, is more people getting involved. And we just pretty much broke every single record for the amount of people participating in an election. So whether you're excited that Biden won or whether you're disappointed that Trump lost, one of the cool things that came out of this is a record number of people coming out to vote, which is what's happening in democracy.
Yeah, amazing. Here's the electoral map right now that we're still looking at some outstanding states, but I just want to talk about those raw numbers with you for a second, Brian. We see 75 million votes for Biden and 71 million votes for Trump. Is this do you know if this is the largest turnout or, I guess it's the largest turnout in American history?
By far the largest turnout in American history, yes.
Really?
Amazing. I mean, listen, nobody has gotten more votes than Joe Biden, and second most in history is this election Donald Trump. So, I mean, both candidates broke every record for the amount of votes they received.
Amazing. And I think what we can do tonight is analyze why that really happened. What turned out this many voters in this amazing election that occurred during a pandemic, which is, again, pretty amazing.
I think that's what opened up a lot of it. I mean, I think for the first time you saw almost every state go to some method of early voting. These mail-in ballots were certainly something new that were, implemented because of the pandemic. We'll see if they stay. Obviously you have a lot of people who like them, and you probably have about 70 million people who don't like them. I think the early voting was interesting. Me and you talked about how we drive around certain towns and you'd see lines that were down the block, wrapped around, down the block again, hours long. So I think the accessibility of voting certainly increased turnout. But then, of course, you have the natural interest. And that is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is a unique beast. And whether you hate Donald Trump or whether you love him, he evokes a lot of passion and a lot of enthusiasm one way or another. And I think you had a lot of people, his supporters, wanted to come out and vote for him. No doubt. They were excited to do so. And I think you had an equal number of people who were excited to come out and vote against him. And one of the things
absolutely.
To know what you think, I'm going to ask you, did those 75 million people come out to vote for Joe Biden, or did they come out to vote against Donald Trump?
I think it was a combination of the two, right? I don't think you can say all 75 million voters were very enthusiastic about Joe Biden. And I'd probably say he's not the candidate that is going to bring the voters out. He's not Barack Obama. He's not Donald Trump, right? He doesn't bring out those voters because of his personality. But maybe in contrast to Donald Trump, he brought voters out because he talked about restoring the soul of the nation, and that's a different that's a different angle. He's not going to get you fired up, but maybe that he's the stabilizing force that the country needs at this moment.
I would disagree that people came out to vote for restoring the soul of the nation, which sounds horrible and sad to say. I just don't think I don't think that's exciting. No one says, can't wait to get out.
That's not exciting. That's not exciting at all. Restoring the soul of our nation. Why would anybody want to do that?
I think it's much more exciting to say I'm coming out because I hate Donald Trump, or I'm coming out because I love Donald Trump, make America great again.
Right.
But I will say this: I think it's interesting to look at Biden as a president-elect. We saw this Democratic Party go very, very left over the last few years, especially in the primary. You had Bernie once again, a major force. You have the rise of AOC, and then you have Biden here, who's a center-left candidate. And really, we talked about this the other night. Joe Biden 15 years ago, I'd say he's the perfect person to bridge us through this divide. I don't know if this Joe Biden at 78 can do it, Don.
He just got elected. What? You're really starting early, actually. We didn't plan to have this discussion until after we talked about the election, but you're saying that the Democrats were crazy left in the primary. They nominated a center-left candidate. Yeah, sure. Biden, what's his name? Sanders and all of them ran. Elizabeth Warren ran, but they lost. And you were talking about it the other night, the line where Biden says he is the Democratic Party. And the fact that whether he can do it or not, Brian, did you see him jog down that ramp?
You're saying that speech? You're saying that because because we talk privately, I love the Joe Biden jog out. I think it's one of his best moves. And I would say that his speech Saturday night was one of the best. And it was for the first time, and I texted you this, then I said, all right, you know what? Like, he's really got a shot to do it, to bring people together, to maybe bring the parties together and move us past, what's really been a very, very divisive campaign season.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's talk about this map from Tuesday night. And I think where we should start is Florida. Florida was the first kind of sign that the blue wave that the polls had predicted was not happening. And I think the area that much of the media focused on was the Hispanic vote. In that blue area on the southern tip of Florida, Miami-Dade County, Broward County, what's that third county? I don't know what the third county is. Palm Beach County, right? Those three counties that are blue, that's where the Democratic stronghold is. And what we saw out of there was that the vote was not coming in as strong for Biden as it did even for Hillary 4 years later, when she lost Florida only by a point. And I think that was the first sign, and that was the first sign that we weren't getting a blue wave, and we were gonna possibly have a Trump victory. And I think a lot of Democrats got nervous that night.
Yeah, I think so.
At that time.
Yeah, especially if you look at Miami-Dade, because it was somewhat comparable in Broward and Palm Beach. But Miami-Dade, where you have a large Hispanic population, a large Venezuelan and Cuban population, that area, if Biden was going to win that state, it needed to really come out for Joe Biden, and you just didn't see it. And Don, I'll let you talk about it because I know you love talking about it. There's a huge factor here in how this night played out, in the fact that Florida processed their early ballots prior to the election.
Right. So the whole thing was, we were waiting, and we'll talk about Pennsylvania a little bit later. We were waiting on Pennsylvania. We're still waiting on Pennsylvania. Florida reported when they closed their polls at 7:30, by 8:30 they had reported huge numbers of votes, and that's because the Republican legislature and the Republican governor in Florida had passed pre-canvassing laws, which basically means that they were able to count their votes 14 days, 14 or 21 days before the election. So as absentee voters voted by mail, as people early voted in Florida, those votes were counted. And so when polls closed, that's what they reported. And then the election day vote came after in Florida. So you have this, just all of the information, all of the data come in within a few hours, what we usually expect on election night. So Florida went from, hey, Biden's doing really well in places like Duval County, which is where Jacksonville is. He's overperforming Hillary. And then a few hours later, well, he didn't do as well as Miami-Dade, and Florida was called on election night for Trump, and the Miami-Dade vote was the only point of data that we had on Hispanics at the time because of all the early vote. And at that point, Democrats, I think, really started to freak out, or the thought was, oh, here we go again, 2016, the polls are wrong, right? All the polls that we'd all been looking at said Florida was close, Biden was up by 2 or 3, and now those turned out to be wrong. So I think a lot of people were like, here we go again in Florida.
Yeah, Dan, let me just jump in here, because while that's going on in Florida, and again, Florida, as you said, by 8:30, all the mail-in ballots, more or less, and really they had reported. It went for Trump very early. So if you're a Democrat on election night, you're seeing this go on in Florida, a state that you thought you were going to be pretty competitive in. Obviously, Biden spent some time down there. Obama was down there the last few days. But while this is going on, you have other states. You have your Wisconsin, your Pennsylvania, your Michigan, and we'll talk about this a little later. They did not process their mail-in ballots. So all you're seeing, the only returns you were seeing that night out of those states were the actual election day totals, which were heavily towards Trump. And I think we should talk about it now that, you know, Democrats encourage their people to get out early. They encourage them to mail in their ballots, participate in the early vote. So a lot of those, if they were not counted right away, the only returns that you saw coming in were those people actually voting last Tuesday, which were predominantly across the board Trump and Republican supporters. So, yeah, if you were a Democrat, you see Florida go down, you're looking at these reports come out of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and it looked like it could be a very, very bad night for Joe Biden.
Election night. So as it shapes up, election night is going to be bad, starting with Florida for Democrats. If all the data you take from Florida's the sample, the bellwether, right? And yes, Biden did well amongst white voters in Florida. He did better than Clinton, but the Hispanic vote in Miami-Dade was really the sort of the warning sign to Democrats for the night. He was only winning the Hispanic vote 50. He ended up winning at 53-46. Is that the number? Yeah, 53-46. He needed to win it by a lot more, and the voter turnout was just not there. So that was a big warning sign for Democrats, but we did see a warning sign for Republicans also. The warning sign was in Jacksonville, in Duval County, where he overperformed or outperformed Clinton's numbers amongst white voters against Trump in this case. So I think then we move on to the next state that reported the early vote that night, as well as their election day vote, where the media was very focused on the hundreds of thousands of people that were voting in Texas. Now, Brian, we saw these reports in Texas prior to Election Day, the lines in Austin and in Harris County. Texas, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they had more turnout before Election Day, correct?
Is that true? I don't know.
Oh, okay. I guess we'd have to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure they achieved 100. Michael Cressy's telling us 108% of their turnout prior to Election Day, which thank you, Dr. Cressy, was absolutely astonishing, and I think it had Democrats absolutely fired up. Beto O'Rourke was on TV, saying how Texas was going to turn blue. He had just barely lost a Senate race. They were talking about turning Texas blue. And then, what were you thinking? Were you convinced of the Texas turning blue?
No, and I'm going to go back even further. For weeks, months, and years, Democrats have been talking about taking Texas. And you pointed to the 2018 Senate race between Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke, which was close. And for years, Democrats have claimed that they've been making inroads to Texas. And credit to the Biden campaign, because at one point, everyone was saying, hey, spend money there, make a play at Texas, you can get it. And in the end, the polls were dead wrong. And Texas, once again, pretty solidly went Republican, which I thought Democrats were closing the gap there. I no longer think that's the case. So credit to Biden, because they would have wasted a lot of time and money there, which really paid off in other states. Texas, in the end, I mean, well, honestly, the only reason I really didn't even look at Texas that night is because I was so shocked by Florida that I said, well, if he's winning Florida by 4 points, there's no way he's dropping Texas.
Right.
And that
right.
actually played as I thought it would at that point. But I think it's an interesting point down the road that Democrats are not as close as they thought they were at turning this state.
I think you're right, and I think there's one more layer to that we can explore. The same way we were looking at Miami-Dade County and the Hispanic vote in Texas, in Florida, what we see is the Hispanic vote in Texas did not turn out the way Democrats had hoped. And that blue area in the southern part of Texas, which is the Rio Grande Valley, on the border with Mexico, you have counties down there that are overwhelmingly Mexican descent. And I think Democrats, El Paso, areas like that, Democrats were thinking they were going to run up the margins in that area. And I'm just looking at a few of those counties. Starr County, which is right there, 52-47 for Biden. Hidalgo County, 58-41 for Biden. So these are good numbers for Biden. He's winning, but he's not winning like he's winning in Philadelphia, and we'll show you Philadelphia later. So those numbers did not run up where Democrats expected. And I think we have to talk about the Hispanic vote for a second as something that's not homogenous across this country. I feel like Democrats got caught in this little narrative that basically you'll be able to appeal to Hispanic votes by talking about the Dreamers and talking about a few Hispanic related issues. And of course, Trump, is bad for Hispanics because of his immigration policies. But that didn't turn out to happen. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I think going back to Miami-Dade, you have a lot of people who are of Cuban descent or Venezuelan descent. And I think that one of the things that the Republicans did a really good job of is painting the Democrats as a socialist, crazy far left party, which really is not Joe Biden. But you have Donald Trump saying repeatedly, this country will never be socialist. And I think that's something that really resonated with a lot of people of Cuban and Venezuelan descent. And in the polling, in the exit polls, it really reflected that as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that worked for the Republicans, calling him a socialist, bringing up Venezuela, bringing up Cuba, saying how Obama did stuff down in Cuba, and Biden, opened up Cuba, and that I think really, really worked. Another thing is that I think Democrats have to get away from the idea of referring to Hispanic voters as this one block, because Dave Wasserman from the Cook Political Report today tweeted out something that I want to talk about with you and see if you agree. The whole idea that Hispanics have assimilated so much into American society. They are becoming an older immigration group. Of course, there's still massive immigration and things like that, but the Hispanics that have been here for multiple generations, the Cubans, the Venezuelans, the Puerto Ricans, who are of course American, the Central Americans, as they become more American, they're not going to be voting along, well, this guy's good for Hispanics. They're going to be voting for, well, who agrees with my social issues that I care about? Who's going to look out for my small business that I have? They're not going to be voting along the lines of, oh, I'm Hispanic and, I should vote for a Democrat.
Well, if you look at a lot of Hispanic communities and if you look in like a lot of the San Diego County, those areas have traditionally been very conservative. So you have a lot of Hispanics who've traditionally stayed with the Republican Party for that social conservatism.
Yeah.
Who I guess some were at a crossroads with some of the president's policies that you mentioned before. But I mean, listen, all these issues and all these groups, I mean, there's dozens of issues that I think these groups have to look at. And I think both parties need to do a better job of, going into subsections of these groups and really trying to speak a language that speaks to them and their needs.
Right. Absolutely. So if we take this narrative of the Hispanic vote leaving the Democrats, the next stop on this this train for losing the Hispanic vote is Arizona. And at this point on election night, this was the next domino to fall for the Democrats. They were going to lose Arizona if this narrative of losing the Hispanic vote was going to keep going.
It didn't play out that way, obviously. And, listen, I don't think I've ever seen a deceased person impact a state more than John McCain, right? And you said it the other night, the ghost of John McCain. And listen, I think the Republican Party's really changed over the last few years. John McCain was a nominee in 08, Mitt Romney in 12. Both of those gentlemen are at odds with the president or McCain before he died was. And you had Donald Trump say horrible things about John McCain, did not care much for John McCain. John McCain did not care much for the president, to be fair. And I think Arizonans, what's the plural of Arizona? I don't know.
Nobody in this Zoom is going to know that.
What's that?
Nobody on this Zoom is going to know what to call it Arizona.
Right now.
Cressy will tell us in the chat, yeah.
But I definitely think that played big here. This was a big state to flip. This is one of the two big states that I really looked at outside the Rust Belt, and even I think it's bigger than that. This state had not gone blue since I believe it was 92, was it? I think it was Clinton, right?
I don't know. I didn't think it was even.
Sorry, 96.
96.
Yeah.
Yeah, 96 was a weird election, but I think Arizona is a traditional Republican state. I mean, I think of Barry Goldwater when I think of Arizona, and I think of John McCain. I think of Republicans, and the fact that Biden is now, the AP and Fox News have called Arizona, and they did that night, but NBC, CNN, CBS, other news networks did not call it and have still not called Arizona, because Arizona is reporting their votes in the just absolutely most confusing way possible. Yeah.
I mean, in the end, Biden won't need it. It certainly looks like he'll win it. Again, you have some pretty reputable agencies and news desks that have called it for him. But I think this is a real message to Republicans that next cycle they've got to look to get Arizona back.
Right.
You want Nevada?
Yeah, let's talk about Nevada. Nevada's also still not been called by most news organizations, correct? By nobody, actually.
Nobody.
Well, nobody is called.
I feel like somebody did, but.
Okay. Yeah, actually, Nevada is called. The Guardian has Nevada called. And they have the margin at over 2 points. But on election night, Nevada, if you saw any of the memes on political Twitter, everyone has called Nevada. Thank you, Dr. Cressy. If Nevada was not called that night, Nevada reported a very small amount of votes that night and basically said, we'll see you on Friday or Thursday. They tweeted out something, hey, we'll see you at 10 a.m. on Thursday. And everybody was like, what?
Yeah, it was frustrating. I mean, especially when you saw how close it was looking to, when people thought it might come down to Nevada, and I believe there's 6 electoral votes. Ultimately, it did not. But, that's a whole other conversation, just how frustrating this election was. But then a lot of it comes down to the mail-in ballots, which obviously was unprecedented with the situation. Why it took so long to count these ballots, I don't know. We obviously have to do better next time around.
No, you got to let them count early. You got to let them count when the votes come in. It can't be counting after election. We'll talk about Pennsylvania in a second, but Nevada, most of Nevada's voters, now if anybody's been to the great state of Nevada, they've most likely been to Las Vegas, which has a lot of restaurants and casinos and the whole strip in Las Vegas. And the biggest union, the union that determines the Democratic Party or makes up the Democratic Party, is the Culinary Workers Union. These are all the workers that work in these casinos and make them run. And they always do a really good job of getting their vote out, getting their vote on also, getting their vote out. And they all did mail-in votes at this time. And I think that's why we were still counting Nevada until today. Those mail-in votes were coming in slowly and being counted slowly.
Yeah, one interesting thing I noted, and obviously it didn't work out for Trump here in Nevada, but you had a lot of workers, a lot of union workers reporting that they actually went for Trump because they feared another shutdown because of COVID. And I think you see a lot of people, and obviously the president took a lot of criticism for his dealing with the pandemic, but you did have a lot of workers who traditionally, might be Biden or union workers who go for Biden. I know you're talking about those Vegas workers, what they got out and the culinary union went for Biden. You did see, I saw people reporting that they went for Trump because they didn't want to go for Biden because they didn't want another shutdown because they economically couldn't afford it. So I think that's something that was kind of overlooked in the months leading up to this election that did play, obviously not enough for the president.
I think, Brian, we would have to revisit that because I did hear that also. But he's not going to end up winning those culinary voters. He's not going to end up winning those union voters in Pennsylvania. And I think those voters realize that if you still have a pandemic out there, but we're open as a country, people are not going to go to restaurants because if there's still a fear that you could get COVID from a restaurant or a casino.
For a culinary union, yes, but I think there are other unions that feared construction stoppage and other stoppages that would directly impact them.
Yeah. All right. So we'll take a look at that. Let's take a look at these heavy union states, the Rust Belt, and this was the blue wall, right? That Hillary Clinton's campaign talked about. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and this is basically this basically turned to Biden. It did turn blue. Trump won all three of these states, and it turned blue. What were some of the factors why Biden was able to win over these three states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then eventually Pennsylvania, which put him over the top to win the presidency?
If you look at these three states collectively, you say, wow, what a mandate here. But I'm going to disagree with that assertion because Trump won these states by very, very slim margins in 2016. And Biden is going to win these three very, very, very small margins as well. So these
by more than a margin than Trump did, though. Much more.
Yes, by more, yes. I mean, I think
Trump won Michigan by 16,000 votes.
Yes.
Biden's going to win Michigan by a few hundred.
By probably 150,000 in the end.
Right. That's 10 times the amount that Trump won it by.
But it's still, can go back the other way pretty simple. I mean, I wouldn't say that that's locked up for next time around.
It's still a swing state.
I'm saying it's a swing state. I mean, Wisconsin, Biden won it by 20,000. Trump won it in 2016 by 22,000. So these are states that, again, I don't think there's some huge shift here. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's being overlooked because obviously the presidencies, the biggest prize up for grabs that night. But other than the presidency, Republicans had a really good night. And I think that the Democrats have to take note of that, going forward and really how they govern here. I told you this before. I don't think much change in how people in these states feel. And I personally don't know anyone who changed their vote from 2016 to 2020. And where I'm going with that is, I think in 2016, you had a lot of people sit out. We'll talk about that, especially in that Philadelphia area. If you remember the night before the election, 2016, Obama was there with Hillary in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I remember that.
Imploring those people to come out and vote. And I think you had a lot of people in those three states who believed the polls, who said, listen, Hillary's going to win. There's no point in going to vote. Hillary's going to win. This is a lot. I also think you had the factor that a lot of people did not like Hillary, which I think is interesting to look at because the Trump voters in 16 and here, they love Donald Trump. I think you had a lot of people in 16 just sit out who Democrats did a great job this time getting them out. And that really played in the cities, but really more so even the suburbs. And I have some counties here. I won't bore everyone, but Milwaukee County, Biden got 317,000 votes. Hillary got 288,000. Dane County, which is where Madison is, Biden got 260,000 compared to 217,000. So I think the major difference here came down to turnout. Democrats came out this time around, and I don't know if they loved Biden. I think they probably liked Joe Biden better than they did Hillary Clinton. But I would argue that a lot of those people came out because they said, wow, last time we were told that the polls were, Hillary, it's a slam dunk, this thing's going to be a landslide, and we were fooled. This time I think they said we're not going to be fooled again. I think they came out and voted. But those states, I think, are a lot closer than these maps are going to show. You look, I don't think Biden, rebuilt the blue wall. I don't think it's a weak foundation of anything. I would say slim margins.
Yeah, I think Michigan definitely was the bluest out of these three. And then Pennsylvania. So let's talk about Pennsylvania really quickly. Pennsylvania was something, I saw some people on Twitter, some Nate Silver and Nate Cohen, all those guys were talking about the red mirage. Because on election night, Trump was up by 7 points, in Pennsylvania. And they didn't call it for him because they knew they had to count this mail-in vote that was going to come in that was going to be leaning Democratic or leaning towards Biden. And it turned out that it wasn't just leaning. It was overwhelmingly for Joe Biden. It was, in some cases, 88%, 90%. I saw one place where it was like, it was 97% to 3% in some districts in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the surrounding counties, Chester County, Delaware County, Montgomery County, they all overperformed what Hillary did. When I think I went to bed at 3 a.m. When I went to bed then, Biden was up by 650,000 votes with 1.4 million left to count. So if you look at the margins,
Trump was up 650.
Excuse me, sorry, Trump is up. Yes, Trump is up by 650,000 with 1.4 million votes to count. And yeah, Biden not only closed that gap, but really he's far surpassed now Trump, which of course, that's a whole other issue. And it's not surprising because, again, Democrats told their people, especially in that Philadelphia area, they told those people, get out early, mail in your vote. And Trump said, hey, go on election day. So it's not completely surprising, but it really did play into that narrative that the president had kind of set up before, saying that, there was going to be fraudulent votes and shenanigans going on. So the fact that it played out like that certainly played into that narrative. And, that's what we're seeing play out right now in the country.
And one last thing on Pennsylvania is that, so Pennsylvania was not allowed to count their votes like Florida was. Their pre-canvassing law they don't have a pre-canvassing law. They had to vote. They had to wait. Then now, follow me for a second for those of you that haven't heard this. They had to wait for all of the election day votes to be counted first, and then they were allowed to count the votes that came in via mail and early voting. Because the governor, Pennsylvania has a Democratic governor and a Republican-controlled state house, and they were not able to come to an agreement about a pre-canvassing law. Now, I don't know what the motives are on either side, but the fact that we're still waiting on Pennsylvania vote. They're still counting those votes is pretty disheartening. And I feel that they need to figure that out before the next election. We can't be waiting, or we can't be sort of have this image of, well, one person's ahead by 7 points and then the next person catches up. I mean, that's ridiculous.
I mean, Wisconsin and Michigan had the same things. All three of those Rust Belt states didn't count till that night.
Right. So let's talk about, speaking of voter turnout. Let you do this because this is all you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when we did our first podcast over in early summer, I think you laughed at me. I said Georgia's in play, right? And I pointed to Stacey Abrams. I love Stacey Abrams from Go. I think I had her 3 on my list, but I think I regretted immediately that night. The work that Stacey Abrams did to get voter turnout, to register voters in that Atlanta area is, I mean, I don't know what word, it is amazing. And she single-handedly, I would say she single-handedly won this state for Joe Biden.
Right.
Georgia is a state that typically has been red. I don't think Democrats have won. I think it was 92 was the last time they won it. It was 92. It now comes back, for the Democrats, obviously by a slim margin. And then we also have two Senate runoffs that are going to take place there. So
Georgia's the center of the political universe right now. I mean, this is earth-shattering for Republicans, very worrisome for Republicans. If they lose a state like Georgia, then it messes up the whole electoral map for them. Stacey Abrams is a force to be reckoned with. I saw a number that black women voted 91% for Democrats, much higher than black men did. I think black men were 81. So black women have been talked about as they are the backbone of the Republican Party, and I mean, Stacey Abrams is absolutely showing that to be true. Did I say Republican? I meant Democratic Party. I'm still thinking of Condoleezza Rice. The Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's interesting playing this out there. I mean, I think you talk about voter suppression and people being denied the right to vote. Stacey Abrams is single-handedly making sure that people can vote. You may not like her politics, but I mean, it's certainly commendable that her message is everybody should vote. And I mean, listen,
that's her politics, Brian. I mean, I don't have to tell you this, but that's her politics. Her politics is voting rights.
Yeah.
If people think that people shouldn't vote, then you're against Stacey Abrams. She wants everybody to vote, whether you're a conservative or a liberal.
Yeah. I mean, listen,
we'll register people.
I think she pretty much have any cabinet position she wants. I think somebody said she wants to run for governor again.
That was me. Yeah, that was me. I've been reading reports that she wants to be governor of Georgia. And Georgia's a beautiful state. It's got beautiful cities like Savannah and Marietta. I love Georgia. It's an amazing state, and it looks like it turned blue in this election, which is absolutely fascinating. So let's talk quickly about what you said. You said that Democrats, Republicans actually had a good night on election night in congressional seats. They actually picked up, I believe, 8 congressional seats. They were down 17 in the House. Now they're going to be down 8 or 9, something like that.
I thought they picked up 10, but I think some
they picked up 10. All right, and then also, the Senate seats. Republicans won the Senate seat in Maine. They beat Susan Collins, which was, for me, that was a big victory for Republicans. I was fascinated by that. So, what are the things that we can talk about that helped Democrats and helped Republicans versus hurt Democrats and hurt Republicans that night?
Well, I think you see the big thing there is Trump, right? And Trump, listen, hate him or love him, he is a unique, dynamic political force. Listen, he helped Democrats with some of his rhetoric. He's obviously extremely divisive. And there's a lot of people who love to hate Donald Trump. But he also hurt Democrats in the fact that, he put on quite a show. He was doing 5 events a day down the stretch. He beats COVID, comes back, and listen, he's got that brand that, you know what, people get excited. If you agree with Donald Trump, you are excited to get out there and vote. I think another big thing that hurt Democrats, though, I think this party went very left, and that's how that's kind of what I attribute to the fact that Republicans had a good night. I think you had a lot of people who came out and said, you know what, I may not like the president, but I don't want this far left party taking over. And I think Democrats have to be really careful going forward. And I know we have a lot of younger people here. I know we've got the Bernie crowd and the Andrew Yang crowd, and you guys may not, you might be left now. But I think if you're looking at this politically, I think Democrats have to be careful because I think, there's no mandate here. Biden won. He's going to win by 5 million votes. He's going to win by about, 3% overall. And again, on those down ballot races, Republicans had a pretty good night. So I think Democrats have to be really careful how they go forward. When they talk about some of their goals like the Green New Deal and this Medicare for all, which obviously Biden doesn't support. I think they've got to be careful.
Yeah, I think the Democrats were branded by the most extreme wing of their party, and that definitely hurt them. The term "defund the police," which we spent an entire forum podcast on, defunding the police and explaining it and analyzing. Nobody, 70 million people aren't. Not all of those people are really thinking about what defund the police really means. They're hearing that, they're like, no, I don't agree. I don't agree with that, and they're voting against it. So I think that absolutely hurt the Democrats. But let's just talk about Trump for a second. Trump, however you feel about him, he worked his tail off at the end of that election. He did numerous. I lost count. He was going to rallies nonstop. He was doing midnight rallies in Pennsylvania. He was turning out crowds, acting like COVID didn't exist, right? Saying he beat COVID. So he really narrowed. I really do believe that the reason why the gap narrowed in places like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin was because he was campaigning so hard.
Zero doubt.
And that hurt Democrats.
I think the biggest thing now for Democrats was just the turnout. They got people to come out and vote. You saw it obviously in Georgia, but you also saw it in Philadelphia. They just pounded that message: get out and vote, mail it in, go early vote. And I honestly think Trump might have made a mistake. I think Trump is so eager to set up this narrative of a fraudulent election, telling his people don't vote early, we vote on election day, that were there people who maybe couldn't make it out there on election day or something happened, who, if they were encouraged to vote early, also might have voted early.
Right. So let's talk about what helped and hurt Republicans during, in this election. And I think that what you're saying is that furious last minute campaigning helped him, but then maybe this whole message of don't vote by mail hurt him in sort of the results that came in.
I mean, listen, I don't know if he would have gotten enough votes to change any states, but I think if he had worked as hard as he worked at trying to set up this narrative early on that it was going to be a fraudulent election, if he had just taken that energy and he told his people, hey, get out and vote, for whatever reason, you have people on election day, the numbers have been dismal across the board over the last, however many years. People, for whatever reason, just don't vote. So I think if he had pushed harder for his people to get out and vote early, it might have been a different tale in some of these places. I think that was.
But I do have to say, his people did get out and vote. We said he's going to have the second most votes of any candidate in American history. I think what hurt him was the lack of the cohesive campaign message at the end. We always talk about it, and this might be like a political nerd thing about having a closing message. You want to have a closing message. And in 2016, I still remember sitting on my couch watching a Trump commercial, and it was the Trump commercial that we talked about previously about saying he's going to fight for you. Politicians have been lying to you forever, and he's going to fight for you. And that was his closing message. And I really believe that got him over the top in 2016. This year, his closing message was, I'm going to fire Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, listen.
Very confusing. Like, why he did not have a closing message. His message was, COVID is a hoax. I'm going to fire this doctor, or we're going to get our country going again. I don't know. It didn't really connect, I think, with voters. And that's why he lost this election.
I disagree. I mean, listen, I think people knew who they were going to vote for. To me, I think it wasn't, do I vote for Biden or Trump? I think it was, do I come out and vote, or do I not come out and vote?
Right.
I think it's all about voter turnout. So, I mean, listen, I don't think there's anything left to be discovered about Donald Trump. Either you love him or you hate him. If you love him, you're never going to vote for Joe Biden. If you hate him, you're never going to vote for him. I get what you're saying. I don't think Biden had a great closing message either. I mean, I know you could say save the soul of America. It's commendable, but I think he talked more about what he wasn't going to do with Trump as compared to having his own unique vision. Listen, it worked for him. He did it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think there is a lot more to discover about Donald Trump. I think the Southern District of New York might be doing some of that discovering. But we'll see. All right, so I think we're going to open it up to questions. I think people have been asking questions throughout. So Zan's going to give me questions. He's doing an awesome job tonight. Mark Valente wants to talk, my old buddy, wants to talk about the runoff elections in Georgia. I'm going to let you talk about that, Brian, because and then I'll talk about maybe the possibility of the Democrats taking the Senate in those elections. What do you think your girl, Stacey Abrams, is she going to be able to?
I mean, January 5th is going to be a crazy night because you have both Senate seats up for grabs. One, I forget which one. One was an appointee last year who had to go up for
Loeffler, Kelly Loeffler.
For election this time.
Yeah.
So in Georgia, if nobody gets a majority, it goes to a runoff. I think it's going to be a stretch for Democrats to take both. I'm going to throw in the Libertarian candidate in there. He picked up about 2% of the vote. Conventional wisdom would think that might go the Republican way. Plus, I think the Republican already, in both cases, were up a couple points. Listen, Stacey Abrams and the Atlanta area, they're going to be ready to go. Is Georgia ready now to vote for Biden and send 2 Democratic senators? I don't know. I'm going to say no. I don't think they can do it.
I think it is a tough thing to do for Democrats to win those 2 Senate seats in Georgia. We see the presidential election is very close. Now, the question is just going to go back to our Venn diagrams, and Trump was in the middle in both of those. Trump's not going to be on the ballot this time. So who's going to turn out and vote in these Senate elections? Are the Trump voters going to be depressed? Is Trump losing voters by maybe not following the transition, in a traditional way? Is he going to alienate people?
No, but the play here is not going to be about Trump. It's going to be about Republicans holding on to the Senate so that you have mixed government. Because I think the Republicans' worst fear is that you have the Democrats will control the House, granted by slimmer margins than they currently do. They'll have the presidency. I think Republicans in Georgia are very aware of the fact that if they lose both of those, you'd essentially have 50-50, at which point Kamala Harris would be the tie-breaking vote if there's a tie. So I don't think it's going to be about Trump. I think by January 5th, who knows what Donald Trump will be doing, but I think it's not going to be about him anymore. It's going to be about mixed government.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think systemically and historically, Americans do prefer a mixed government. I know we get all upset that they can't pass any laws, but I think Americans like that. They like the whole idea that one party doesn't have too much power. And we've seen that play out over the last couple elections. So, all right, Roshni had a question about the polls. You texted me Thursday night outside of a group thread. First, after you checked on my mental health, the second thing you said was polls are dead.
Yeah, Tuesday that was.
Yeah, what's that?
That was Tuesday. I think you said Thursday. I might have missed
Tuesday night, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how. I don't know. I mean, listen, there's certainly a Trump factor there. We saw in 2016, and I guess we still see it now, that people don't want to admit for whatever reason that they're voting for Trump. Once again, the polls were very wrong. I mean, Trump grossly outperformed the polls in really every state. I don't know. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Are we going to get excited in 4 years with these polls? Probably, only because we have nothing else to look at.
Because we have nothing else. Yeah, we have no. Yeah, exactly. If we're still quarantined 4 years from now, we are going to get excited about the polls. But I think my personal theory on the polls is this. We see polls in places like Israel and England, and they're almost 100% right. And what we have to realize is the United States is such a diverse place. And we're talking about diversity across racial lines. We're talking about diversity along education. And I think we're a very difficult place to poll because of our diverse, heterogeneous population. So pollsters have to do a really good job of sampling. And just take, for example, what we talked about earlier, that Hispanics, right? Okay, I know I need to poll 200 Hispanics in my 1,000-person poll. Well, are you polling Central Americans who are very different than Cubans, who are very different than Puerto Ricans? So I think pollsters just need to do their jobs better, and maybe we'll get a little closer to accurate, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you can blame pollsters because they were all wrong, more or less. But I mean, listen, there's something there that we have to look at. But again, we'll look at it anyway because it's what we do and it's all we have.
Yeah. We got some more questions coming in from everybody. Thank you so much on the chat. You guys are awesome. What should we expect from Joe Biden in regards to COVID policy? Can he do a national mask mandate? Are we going to be going into lockdown now? Is that that's a question from Kyle.
I'm sure Kyle's very worried about that. Kyle, I don't think Biden's going to look to do it. I saw him speak before, and I saw some of his plan. He's going to put more money into testing. He's going to put more money into trying to find a vaccine, which obviously I think we've all heard the positive news coming out on that front. And I think he will push the governors in their respective states to try to push mask mandates. I do not think you'll see it come from the national level.
Right.
That would be more of like a continuation from, not specifically a continuation of what the Trump campaign is doing, but more of an extension of what the outgoing administration was doing before.
Well, I would probably disagree that Trump has put pressure on governors to issue a mask mandate in their state, with Governor DeSantis probably being the prime example. But I don't think you'll see Biden, try to go that route with a national mask mandate. And I don't think, I don't know, will we see a lockdown? I think that'll be on a state-by-state area. I think a lot of states like New York are looking to go on more of a regional level, even going town by town or zip code by zip code. So, I mean, I hope we don't get there, but
right.
I mean, listen, Biden doesn't have any real authority until January 20th anyway, and who knows where we'll be then.
Well, we did get some really good news this morning about this vaccine, and I'm hoping to bring Dr. Cressy in a little bit right now, and ask a few questions, or if you guys have any questions about the vaccine. Dr. Cressy is. I'm going to let him introduce himself. How about that? Where is he? Is he around?
Yeah, I'm here. What?
Who are you?
Hello, I'm Mike Cressy. I am a biology teacher at Malvern. I know some stuff about vaccines. I don't know what kind of questions do you want about this specific one that just came out?
Well, Doctor, I mean, what do you talk about? I mean, I guess does it show promise? Do you think it will be effective? What have you heard about it?
Yeah, I mean, so all my friends in the know who are in pharmaceutical, in big pharma, they are all really excited about it. And so basically it's, that whole 90%. So the trial was with like 44,000 people. And I think only 44,000 people who were never exposed to COVID. And then out of that, I think 94 of them tested positive for COVID. And so there were no side effects or anything like that. So it's really promising. Yeah. And it's a new type of vaccine, which is really cool.
Right. And I just want to talk about that. The new type of vaccine, that's the mRNA that they keep referring to, right?
Yeah. So basically the way that it works is that you don't typically the way a vaccine works is that you get like a dead virus or a virus that's been weakened so that it's not pathogenic. And that's what you get injected. And then you build up an immune response to that. So this mRNA, it's just the spike protein that's on COVID. So basically you get injected with this mRNA and your cells make that spike protein. And then you build up an immune response to that. So if you do get infected with COVID, it'll recognize the spike protein and you will never get it. So it's really, it's a novel way to do it. And I think it's really good. I mean, it's a married couple in Germany who like emigrated from Turkey, who made the vaccine, who invented this vaccine. So it's really promising.
Really? That's awesome.
Any idea on distribution, Dr. Cressy, when it would be ready and how long it would take to distribute to everyone?
So the big problem with it is that it has to be shipped really cold. So you're not going to be able to get it probably at like your local clinic or at like CVS because they have to keep it at like minus 80 degrees. So it's probably going to be something that you have to like go to the hospital to get because they have the facilities and the infrastructure to keep it. But I would say that, you know, they're looking for approval and they can have 50 million doses by December. And I would say probably sometime in the spring, we could look at, you know, having, you know, enough doses. I think that the Trump administration, like they made a deal for 100 million doses with Pfizer. This was just like a blanket, like if you get a vaccine, we will buy 100 million doses of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, you know, that'll probably 100 million doses. I don't know if it's enough, but it's close to it because you figure, you know, who's going to get it, right? You know, all the health professionals and then, you know, essential workers. And then I think it'll be good. I think springtime, if everything works out going forward.
Mm. Well, thanks, Dr. Cressy. We'll continue to answer a few questions over the next maybe 10 or 15 minutes or so. I know you guys have questions and we want to get to them, but it's coming up on 9 o'clock. And I just want to say, you know, thank you, absolutely thank you from the bottom of my heart to everybody for joining. Brian and I really love to do this. And Zan helping us on the production end. We want to keep this going. We want to keep this productive. And we want to keep answering your questions, keep informing. And I just want to say thank you again for joining us. Please leave your email in the chat so that we can email you out future shows that we're going to do. And also, if you have any feedback for us, absolutely, please leave feedback. Topics for the next show. We will definitely do that. But for those of you that would like to stick around for the next 10 minutes or so, I think, Brian, if it's okay with you, we'll answer a few questions. Maybe Dr. Cressy, you could stick around too, just in case the questions are up your alley or whatever. So
yeah, sure.
Asha has a question. She says, what will be the role of the Supreme Court in terms of Trump's voter fraud accusations? And I was thinking about this question. I thought it may appear tonight. And I wrote down this timeline. So on December 8th, the states have to pick their electors. And they have to be congressionally approved electors, or they have to let Congress know who the electors are. On December 14th, those electors have to meet in their state houses, or however they're going to do it this year, and vote. On January 6th, those votes are counted by the new Congress after the new Congress is sworn in on January 1st. And then on January 20th at 12 o'clock, the presidential term ends and a new president is sworn in. Now, you have a few options. If Biden gets the Electoral College victory that it seems like he's earned, he will be sworn in on January 20th. Or else Trump's, you know, if there is no Electoral College vote, or there's no certification, or the Supreme Court stops something, the presidential term still ends on January 20th. And Brian, I'm sure you know this. Who becomes president on January 20th if it's not Biden or Trump?
I have no clue. It's a great question. I don't think we'll get there. I'm not worried about getting there. I know who it is because I wrote it on this piece of paper. I mean, I'm going to guess the current Speaker of the House, whoever it is.
Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, you're right.
Well, provided she wins, which she probably will. So yes, it would be Speaker Pelosi.
Yeah. So you're saying. So basically what we're saying is if the Supreme Court stops this whole process from happening and it is delayed past January 20th or past January 6th, you're going to get a presidential term ending and an interim president, which could be Speaker Pelosi, until there is a new president picked by the by the Electoral College. Now they could pick it on January 21st, and her term would end, and the next president could be sworn in.
I mean, do you really think? I mean, is that something you're really looking at here?
I'm not, but I think the Trump administration is. I think that's what we have to really think about. Me and you may not be looking at this, and me and you, like I read the Michigan the law the lawsuit filed by the Trump administration in Michigan, and it was rejected for being called defective. And like I'm looking at that, but then people are watching CNN and they're seeing Mitch McConnell say that this election is not over. So I think there's anxiety out there in the country.
I don't think there should be. I mean, you might get a partisan judge somewhere who grants some validity to one of these frivolous cases, but I mean, you're looking at like 5 different states that have to be overturned in, and even if one of these went through, what are you looking at? Maybe a few thousand votes here or there. It's probably not going to be enough to swing a state, and it's certainly not going to be enough to swing an election. I would not have anxiety about this at all.
All right. So, Dr. Cressy, there's a question for you from Angie. She says 2 questions. First question, I think, is a quick one. What are your thoughts on the rapid test and their accuracy?
Yeah, so there were the rapid test. There was a big problem with like the first one that came out that got approved, and that was like the
Abbott Labs test, right?
Yeah, the person who approved it, the doctor knew that there was problems with it, but they sent it out anyway because they were like concerned. They wanted to get it out there, so it was only like 2/3 effective. So I think that the rapid tests that are kind of out now are a little bit better, but I think it's happened at places where the rapid test isn't good enough. You still have to go and get the regular test. So I mean, I think that in general, if you feel symptomatic or you were exposed, you should get the normal test, the cotton swab test. I know in some other countries they have better testing as far as accuracy. They have saliva tests and they have that kind of rapid testing, but we don't have access to that here.
Yeah, I saw somebody just asked about the saliva tests. Next question's from Mark Valente. So he says, since big pharmaceuticals are free from liability related to vaccine damages, will the vaccine courts hear damage cases that may come about from this vaccine as well?
So I have no idea about like liability laws as vaccines are concerned. So I can't answer that. I don't know what the laws are.
What do they just hand out PhDs like wafer What?
Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have a law degree too.
All right. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question about liability. Related to vaccine damages.
I'd like to know what Mark is talking about. Is he talking about like side effects? I mean, I think that if my assumption would be that because the FDA is strict, right? Yeah. When they approve something, it's really strict. Like I know that like if aspirin was like going through the FDA now, it would not be approved. Right. That's how strict they are right like now with new drugs. Really? And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably why, because when you have these, when you have these studies, the trials, like you test it so much that like it has to be really good if it's approved. And that's all I can say about it. I don't know.
Hey, this is Mark. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, Mark, what's up?
What's going on? How you guys doing?
Good, great. Thanks for joining tonight.
Yeah, no, this is great. This has been really great and refreshing to hear a bipartisan conversation about what's transpired. Yeah, the thing I was referring to was so there's a specific court system related to vaccine damages. There are I think there's been something like $4.5 billion of damages paid out by these vaccine courts related to, I'm sure, plenty of the vaccines that we're all that we all probably gotten and are familiar with. So I was just wondering, because, and there was some point in time, just to backtrack for a second, I don't know if it was 1984 or 86 or something like that, but there was some point in time when the government said, hey, vaccines are super important for the greater good and for everyone. So we're going to create this, we're going to essentially relieve the big pharma companies of liabilities relating to these damages, because we don't want them going out of business. They're way too important for everyone's health and well-being. So we'll foot the bill if there are, viable side effects for vaccines. Again, I'm not a an expert in the area by any means, but it's just something that I've done a little bit of reading on, and so I was just wondering if it fell under the same umbrella. I'm sure it does, but that's the background there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. And I don't know, like, I guess all bets are off when you have things are getting approved very fast. And so, I have no idea about that. Yeah. So,
Dr. Cressy, I believe it's called Operation Warp Speed. You might have heard of it. It's very fast.
Well, if this is, I don't, it's a bad reference. Like, I was thinking, so if this is Operation Warp Speed, and since Pfizer has nothing to do with warp speed, is this Operation Ludicrous Speed? But that's a Spaceballs reference. I don't know if you guys know that.
I'm sure some people know the Spaceballs reference.
Yeah.
All right. Another question. What positions did Democrats take or represent that made voters say that's too far left and vote the other way, especially in House races? That's a really good question from Omer. And I really like that question. And I mean, Brian, you had said that, actually, I don't think you had actually said which specific issues do you think were too far left for voters to that would have turned voters away from Democrats?
Well, I'll say this. I'll say I think there's some platforms and some things that Democrats put out there, and then I think there's the way that Republicans branded them, right? Yeah. So let me kind of preface it by saying
that's politics. So that
no, it is. But I just again, so I think you mentioned the defund the police. I know that's one that was very, that a lot of people said, well, they kind of took that as meaning literally defund the entire police, which I guess some extremists think that. I think others call for reform. But I think that's something that Republicans really played up. I mean, you heard Trump talk about, he's the law and order president. He's going to save the suburbs, talk about how much he loved the police. I think you look at things like the Green New Deal. I think that hurt them. And again, I think these things hurt Biden in some aspects. And I think, and I told this to Don the other night, just going back to the presidential election, I think one of Biden's best moments in all of this came in the second debate, when they started to attack him saying, hey, you're going to approve the Green New Deal and you're going to try to defund the police and Medicare for all, and we're going to lose our health care. And Biden said, I don't know who you're talking about. You must be referring to the people who I beat in the primary, because those are not my platforms, which I think was one of his best moments. But I think those attacks still stuck to Democrats in general. And I think you did have a lot of people who were scared of that. And then I think you did have some people who said, hey, you know what, I can't send Trump, I'll vote for Biden, but I'm going Republican the rest of the way. Because people want that mixed government. And I think it's probably, well, we'll see. We'll have a Democratic president.
I heard Al Franken yesterday say something that, it was interesting. That it's the first top Democrat. Al Franken is a former senator from Minnesota who had to resign, and that's a whole other episode, I think. But he's a former Saturday Night Live writer, all that stuff. But he's a top-level Democrat, the first top-level Democrat that I ever heard in this cycle basically say defund the police was a travesty. It was a horrible motto that stuck to the Democrats. And he was disheartened when that stuck to Democrats. And it was interesting that he said that, because why didn't Democrats say that prior, right? Why didn't they say that defund the police? Like, we want to explain what that means, but we don't really mean that. And Republicans were basically like, yeah, they're saying to defund the police. They want to take down the police. I talked to so many people just in life, like people that I, family members and things like that, who voted for Trump just because of the police, especially here on Long Island.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we can take the next question. Yeah.
No. I think we're done with questions, right? Or do we have more questions? Are there people still on that want to answer some questions? I mean, you can even turn your camera on, unmute yourself, and ask a question if you want. At this point, all bets are off.
Mr. Nadeem, I had entered a question, but I think it got lost with all the comments that came in. Do you ever think that they'll ever have effective online voting?
It's that's a really good question. Every person that I know that is tech savvy, computer programmers, computer engineers, they all say it's possible. My brother, who's a computer engineer, they all say it's possible. I think it's just a matter of, do we have the will as a nation to do something like that? And then we open it up to fraud. And there's a former student in this Zoom right now who is studying cybersecurity, who had something to say, I think, about this. She said, "No way." Roshni, do you want to chime in here? No. So I think maybe she's not basing it on her cybersecurity expertise at this point, but I don't know. I feel like people are saying it's possible. Do we think that is possible? What do you think? What do you think, Eliza?
Don, if I could jump in, Don, I think that obviously, no, but I think there's a tech side of the house. Is it technologically feasible? I think there's a security part of it, but then there's also a political side of it, that if you look, states run their own elections, right? So inherently, and I would probably speculate that it would probably favor Democrats, I'd imagine, right? They're a younger breed. They're more, computers, right? So I think that whatever party, so say for argument's sake that it benefits Democrats, I think you will see Republicans fight like crazy to block that from happening. So I think you would see, I think that's really where the challenge would be, that whatever party feels they would be adversely affected by it would fight like crazy to block it from being implemented. So I do not think you'll ever see that, especially on a national level. And for that reason, I don't know if you'd see it even on a state level, in any states bringing it in.
Yeah. Eliza, what do you think? Do you think that's something that you can see the United States going towards, or something you'd want?
Well, I mean, we can vote electronically for stocks. If you have stocks, you get sent information that you can vote electronically. So you would think that the SEC is keeping track of that stuff. I mean, Russia is always talk about Russia, doing something. So that is a question, that whether or not someone can hack in and change things. But I just think that we should see if there's a way to leverage technology instead of all this other way. I mean, people vote, people do banking, they trade billions of dollars in stocks, and I can't see why we can't look into it, at least as an option, possibly.
That's exactly the argument that I've been seeing out there, that I can log in and trade stocks, and billions and billions of dollars are being traded, exactly as you said. However, I can't log on and make a vote. Social Security is fully online now. Medicare is fully online now. Why can't all that stuff be tied in? I think we have the capability to do it, but again, to Brian's point, I'm not sure whether we can get both parties to agree. All right, so I think we're done tonight. Thank you so much to everybody. This was a lot of fun. I mean, for Brian and I think, right, Brian, I keep speaking for you, but I think this is just this is an awesome thing to do. Yeah, go ahead. Who has a question? Who's that?
Kevin.
Hey, Kevin, what's up?
Oh, God.
Go ahead. Kevin's my favorite student, so I gotta allow him to to ask a
Really?
question. Okay, go ahead.
That's wow.
Anybody that learns English this quickly, is my own heart.
Do you think Trump is gonna go on a firing spree like he just fired? I forgot his name.
Esper, the Secretary of Defense. Yeah.
Yeah, during his lame duck period.
I
read reports earlier saying, because obviously now you have all these people in the White House who now are jobless in 2 months, and I think he was quoted saying to someone, "Hey, if they're not on board with what I'm doing, let me know and I'll fire them right now."
I saw that. Yeah.
There was also a report that said if anybody is looking for work elsewhere, they'll get fired.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
I don't think that's particularly fair. I don't think he'll go on a firing spree. I think he'll go on a Twitter spree. I think he'll go on a a court filing spree. I don't know if he'll fire everyone, considering.
You know what? On this Esper firing, I take a little issue with the media on their reporting. Esper's been on the outs ever since the gassing of the protesters in by that church right by the White House. I don't know what that square is called.
Lafayette Square?
St. John's Episcopal.
Okay, yeah, the church where he held the Bible. Esper was not in agreement about that moment, about him holding the Bible, or the tear gassing, the tear gas that happened. So that was the moment where this started to fall apart. This relationship started to fall apart, and he was getting ready to resign a few days ago. So this was months in the works, and I think the media didn't do the best job of saying that. They were trying to make Trump sound impulsive tonight, and I don't know if that's definitely the case. I don't think we'll see large-scale firings or a Saturday Night Massacre or anything like that. Okay. All right. Last question, I promise. Would there ever be a redistribution of electoral college votes? Could we keep the electoral college, but restructure it in some way?
Well, we would obviously need an amendment to do that. As far as a slight redistribution, there will be with this census, and I think we covered this.
Whoa, wait. Why do we obviously need an amendment? So the only way to change the electoral college or do anything with the electoral college would be to amend the Constitution?
If we were going to redistribute votes,
yeah,
I would think so.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah. I can't think of it. I mean, it's been modified over the years, not necessarily through amendments, but I mean, that is in the Constitution. So any large-scale redistribution or change would have to be put into the Constitution via amendment, just like when, DC got 3 electoral votes.
Right.
But on a simple scale, and I don't know who asked the question, but I mean, the electoral votes are decided based on the number of senators plus representatives. So there will be a change with this current census as population shifts, and we'll see if there's a change in the number of representatives each state has.
I think you got a better chance of adding states than you do of getting 3/4 of the states to approve to an amendment to the Constitution. Places like Puerto Rico, Guam.
Well, if Puerto Rico or DC became a state, that would change things. I mean,
that would give them 2 senators.
But yeah, Puerto Rico became a state, they would get 3 electoral votes, right? I mean, I don't think they have enough people for more.
Yeah, probably 3. Long Island could become a state. We could be our own state.
Ew, don't let that happen.
All right, Kev. We're on it, Kev.
Senator Billy Joel. I mean, come on, why not?
Senator Kevin Nash.
Kevin Nash, still sure. All right, guys. Thank you so much again. Thank you for joining. We're definitely going to do this again. To all the students out there, to the former students, to our friends, family, everybody who joined, thank you for joining this discussion. And I just one last thing I want to say is as long as we continue these discussions about our politics, I think our politics will feel less awful, and we'll be able to have discussions with each other because we're all out there for the good of our country, for the good of our families, the good of our communities. So thank you so much for joining, and hope to see you guys next time. Have a good night.
Thank you guys. I'll see some of you at 7:55 tomorrow morning.
See you tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Brian. Great job.
Thanks, Dr. Cressy. Loves having you.
Yeah, thanks. See
Please.
you later.